Hello, everyone. Good day to all of you. This is Manas Dasgupta, CTO of Starweaver, in front of you to introduce you to our next session. And that is going to be Context is the New Curriculum, How to Engineer AI that Actually Understands Your Business. So we will go dive into how context is playing a great role, an important and critical role in corporate learning. And with us, we have Rav Ahuja, who is going to be the moderator of this session. Rav, welcome to the session. To introduce Rav, Rav is a experienced product leader and content officer with 4.5 million students on Coursera. That's amazing, Rav, and a demonstrated history of creating and launching highly successful programs and online courses. Welcome, Rav. Over to you.
Thanks, Manis, and welcome everyone. Glad to be here and hope all of you are enjoying the summit so far. I certainly am. So before we start the session, I'll ask all the distinguished panelists to introduce themselves, starting with you, Vin.
Thank you so much, Manas and Rav. Appreciate you guys having me. My name is Vin Mitty, lead data science and AI efforts at Legal Shield, a legal services company. I'm also the author of an upcoming book, AI Decision Map, where I provide decision frameworks to decide what AI project in learning and in business to, look at before even spending a dime.
Great. Natalie?
Guess she hasn't joined in yet.
Okay. Hopefully she'll join in a few minutes. So just to get warmed up, Manis and Vin, I'd like to, just ask you to share in just a minute an interesting use case or an app for AI that you've come across, whether it's learning or some other field.
I can go first. There are two things I'm really interested in. Well, one, no surprises here, but Cloud Code has been really interesting for in the programming world and in the data science world. The other one is a company called Reducto. It's been interesting to me because they're solving one of the major problems in AI, which is hallucinations during document processing. So everyone wants to load up documents and have AI answer, based on those documents. But there's a size of these documents at which even the best foundational models start hallucinating. We see diminishing returns. Reducto and other similar companies are solving this problem and getting to near 100% accuracy through agentic AI and other techniques.
All right.
All right. So do you want to have Natalie's introduction or shall I go?
Yeah, Natalie, would you like to introduce yourself before we...
Again, yes, good morning. I'm Natalie Kourtidis. I'm work in education, higher education, and global education for 15 years. I'm based in Australia and I'm joining you from early morning. Yeah, so my background is really just joining the dots from executive strategy and then operational delivery, and then overlaying that with AI now in the context of workplace capability.
Great. Natalie, do you have an example of an interesting use case of AI that you've recently, come across that you'd like to share?
Yeah, so lately I've been working with clients that are looking at bringing the human back in the loop. I think that's really important for higher education to ensure that, what we're contextualizing in terms of learning platforms has that intelligence layer. Looking at tools out there, I don't think we're quite ready for higher education where we need to go with AI and learning. I think it needs a lot more development. And so really just trying to go from originally what they've been using to date is chatbox and other AI agents, and they're calling it AI enabled. And really what we want to develop is more of the intelligence part of it to help students through their learning pathway And I think that for me is really exciting to investigate with the clients to see, where can we take this, and including the human element to it. My background is really just ensuring that AI does not take over, and we really integrate a lot of the artificial, genetic intelligence as well. It's important for higher education and education providers to do that.
All right. So as far as mine goes by, I was thinking about it. It's not a use case really I came across, but I was kind of dabbling over an idea. So we've probably come across tools like Zapier or N8N, especially Zapier. You provide a prompt and it creates an agent which is comprised of multiple steps, and each step will perform certain task, etc., etc., and some of them can be agentic as well. But I haven't really come across many cases where you have such a capability of composable agentic platforms where you can create blocks, and with those blocks you can create an agentic architecture or agentic workflow. However, that be domain specific. So for instance, it can be an LMD specific composable agentic platform, or for instance, a recruitment specific composable agentic platform. The Zapiers of the world, which which give you similar kind of capabilities, but the disadvantage is that they are very generic, and they need technical um, intervention, technical knowledge, and so on and so forth, is not very friendly to business user, the end user. So a kind of composable agentic platform that is domain specific, that works around domain based ontology.
All right, great. So just, before we get into the heart of the panel, just to level set everyone, the topic of the session is context is the new curriculum. In your view, what does contextual AI mean, and why does it matter for businesses and corporate learning?
Yeah. So contextual AI, in my mind, is AI that understands the situation around the task it's been, asked to do. Right. It's not just the prompts that the user is giving, but it understands business, and has more context about what's not in the prompt itself. For example, we brought this training simulation software called Second Nature. This basically helps our customer care agents role play with different customer personas. What makes it useful is the context it has about our company, the kinds of questions customers ask, and kinds of objections the customers have. So this context helps the AI create more relevant situations and role plays. So it's more useful for our care agents.
All right, who wants to go next?
Next.
Yep.
Yes. I think it's really shifting from the generic AI and making it like everything like if you have two companies really in the same industry. So if we've got a Russell Group and then another university, it's really incorporating and moving recommending generic training modules to more towards more of the actual organization having the culture embedded in there. So for a Russell Group, they might prioritize research intensity and global rankings and academic prestige. And then you've got another more commercial university that's just really more focused on the workforce and student outcomes and making sure that, they've got partnerships in the workforce. And so I think adding that layer of culture and what's the strategic outlook of each company is really important. And that's what I think the context AI is really should be delivering on.
Right.
Right. So traditional corporate learning is more just in case that you follow a curriculum and learn something. And but in corporate learning, contextual learning is really just in time. So let's say you are a project manager and you are creating a project plan, then this agentic learning assistant that you have comes in and helps you that, okay, you are making a mistake here, or you can improve in that, or you can improve or optimize that place, etc. And that comes from the organizational context, and that organization context is something that is extremely critical in this case to design an architect and etc. Which is not going to be a simple document somebody has made just to create that particular agent, but is going to comprise of years of learning of project management experience that the organization has, coupled with general project management knowledge, providing that context to the user, to the learner.
Yeah, so that's I think a really important point, that it's wealth of information that has been built over the years in a company. And when you look at most AI tools in corporate learning today, they're based on general purpose models with thin layers of customizations. So what does it actually take to make AI understand the specific context of a business, Natalie?
It's really taking layers of the organization and embedding it, and not just data points. I think it's really bringing in departments and everything from governance to strategic vision, and really embedding it into the ecosystem of the AI strategy. And I see a future where we're going to have an AI office in institutions where their role is just to manage all of the different departments, and bring things together to really understand the core business of an organization, and really just owning that as part of a lot of universities talk about silos, and education providers, and that every department sort of has their vision and their goal. And I think it needs to bring everything together, and that's someone's role to try and do that and embed it into the ecosystem that we're developing in AI.
Yeah. Anything to add, Win?
Yeah, no, exactly what Natalie just said. I can kind of provide a example from the analytics world. So we've developed a conversational AI tool that, for analytics, it's basically a AI trained on our internal data, and it's a 24/7 data analyst for executives, right? So, but you can get to 80% accurate answers really quickly. But if you want to get to the 98, 99% accuracy, you have to work a lot to train the model using techniques called semantic modeling, define business metrics, logic, really be really focused on testing, making sure that you have created frameworks to test for hallucinations, test for accuracy, and things like that. So in my mind, I think demoing an AI tool is really, really easy, getting to the 75-80%, but really getting to the 95-98% accuracy is the hardest piece.
Yeah, that's a great point. So one of the issues is that, trying to understand your business implies there's going to be sensitive information, competitive, strategy information, financial data, personal records. And, so when it comes to, training your AI models or exposing information to AI systems, how do you decide, and what is it that you decide to keep off limits?
Really tricky question. I think and that's what everyone's concern is at the moment. And I go back to governance, I think, and strategy, and really as a organization making those decisions as well. And so when an employer is part of that organization, they read the policies and the governance to understand where their data's going. Yeah, I think it's a very tricky environment. But yeah, having the right framework, being open and transparent with what we're doing with the data, I think that's going to be crucial moving forward.
So from my point of view, there's something that we need to understand when we are talking about critical data and agents having access to those critical enterprise data like financial records and etc. There can be other things. There is something called agent risk trifecta. So what the agent risk trifecta is, your agents have got access to your critical confidential data in the organization. It also has exposure to untrusted, possibly external data, which is not validated by the organization. So let's say, for instance, your agent is going out scheming scheming out context from other websites or other portals, etc., which is not verified in real time by the agent. And then coupled with those two, the agent also has access to the external world to communicate, ability to communicate to the external world. So when you have this agent risk trifecta materializing with your agents, that becomes quite risky. So some of the techniques that organizations have started using is, one is rule of two. So in the agent risk trifecta, you never let all three of them fulfill or materialize within your agents, limited to maximum of two of them if you must, right? So then also assess the blast radius. If there is an incident because of one of them, then what is your blast radius, and limit and contain that with limitation of access, limitation of ability to communicate to the external world, having human in the loop at critical junctures within the agent's workflow, etc., etc. So these are some of the techniques that organizations have started, which have started emerging, and organizations started adopting them.
No, 100%. I mean, what Natalie and Manas said, I'm totally agreeing to that. I would, in addition to the agentic trifecta and focusing on guardrails, I would say just ask yourself what business problems need to be solved, and not just, hey, where could I use AI, and just throw AI at everything, right? So being more responsible and focused will help you with unplanned data exposure.
Yeah, definitely. So, one of the issues that I see with contextual AI is, the ultimate promise of contextual AI is that learning becomes directly relevant to a learner's role in the company and the environment in which they need to operate in, and the context of that environment. But relevance also means narrowness in some context. And so how do you, how quickly can contextual AI adapt to be, less tunnel vision, and make it more immediately useful than just having a narrow focus? So Natalie, do you want to give your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I've been thinking about this because this is exactly like the area that I want to get into and develop something quickly. I think, the best learning systems operate on two levels. You have to have like the precision learning and maybe the just in time, if we want to call it that, exposing people to things that they need to know straight away. And then you need that expansion learning layer, I think. And that's like giving people like the leadership thinking, the innovation, ethics, communication, I think, and systems thinking. That's all my background, and that's what I really get excited about. I'm looking for a system that can create that. And if you think of a mentor, I think of all the mentors that I've had over the years, you don't go to them to teach you that one skill. You want them to help you, and they sort of mold you and develop you in those other areas. So, I would love to see more development in that area where, AI can take someone to that next level and just grow them as a human. If you've got, mentors all over the world that you want to, communicate with, that's where I think we can really grow this in an exciting way. And that's what I'm looking forward to.
Right. So my take is that, so we are talking about, let's say if I pick out one of the most common techniques of agentic AI, retrieval augmented generation, or RAG. So when we are talking about tunnel vision in corporate learning or learning in general, we are talking about narrow RAG. So, I mean, an extension of what Natalie has already mentioned. We make narrow RAG a lateral RAG, or apply techniques like the 80-20 rule. So whereas 80% of what the contextual learning or contextual AI is telling you is grounded with the context specific or scenario specific information, but 20% is pulled from adjacent um, disciplines. So let's say, for instance, a Python programmer is stuck with a particular problem, and your contextual RAG or contextual AI is really providing him or her with the right help, teach that particular portion, etc. But also pulling in context from how to make that program more secure with secure programming concepts, and or for that matter pull in concepts on UI design that can be implemented in the project that or the application that he or she is developing.
Yep, that's true. So I think one of the things that I feel challenged with is, contextual AI at times tends to be fairly static, based on information that the company has collected over the years. But businesses change, constantly. New products, new competitors, new regulations. That happens all the time. So how can contextual AI adapt? And what happens if the lag between reality and what the model knows is a huge one, right? So Win, do you want to shed some light on that?
Yeah, this is a really interesting question, right? And really important one as we mature into agentic and general AI use cases. We could kind of look at some of the other verticals we've been dealing with in the business world, right? So we could look at machine learning and change management, where these are solved problems. There are always things changing, impacting business, and so on. In terms of machine learning, this is a solved problem. The problem of system or the model lagging in performance over time is called model drift. And this could happen because of unplanned changes in the world affecting your business, or uncaptured changes within your business, right? So new product, you mentioned new products, but if that's not captured in the model, then that causes model drift. The way that we solve for it in machine learning is by creating a robust and periodic quality assurance process. And then a similar process could be applied to AI in the context of, contextual AI. So just keep measuring the outputs, have a dedicated team and space for testing your models. And if there is drift, then, you need to focus on training. And also the other piece is change management. AI needs to become part of the change management process of your organization. And it needs to become part of your roadmap. Every time you launch a new product or a website gets updated, you have marketing team come in and a product team come in and be part of the change management process. Similarly, AI training department also needs to be part of the change management process. That would make sure that your AI is kept up with your organizational changes.
Absolutely. The agentic, so the you spoke about the model drift, and the other case is agent drift. So when your context gets stale, you get agent drift and stale outcomes from the model. So essentially, and we also have to appreciate the fact that the agent drift is not always a problem. There are agentic systems where agent drift is not a problem. So let's say, for instance, you've got a agentic chatbot, customer assistant chatbot on Amazon's website. That probably doesn't have a agent drift problem, because that uses structured data about projects from the databases, and supposedly the product databases and product details are up to date. I'm assuming they are up to date all the time, because that's the same information that is reflected on the Amazon website, their product cards, etc. So when the agent is accessing the same information, supposedly again, can be wrong, can be different. It doesn't have the agent drift problem. However, you have an HR policy, which and a bunch of policies which have let's say expiry dates. You build in something called metadata within your let's say if you are hosting those HR policies in a vector database, along with the text of the HR policies, you also maintain something called metadata, and one of the metadata should be the expiry date of the context, or the HR policies. And when the agent works on that particular vector database, it also looks at the metadata and sees that okay, it's stale. So let me find out the active one.
All right. Let me ask one more question before we open it up to the audience. Enterprise adoption is moving fast for AI, but I don't know if governance and strategy are keeping pace. First of all, your views on whether governance and AI can keep pace, and if so, what can you do to help keep up?
So it's a problem like what we have with cybersecurity. So we architect systems, and then cybersecurity comes when you have got an audit after the product is made live, or an incident comes up, a cybersecurity incident comes up, then cybersecurity comes into the picture within an application. So similarly, in case of AI-based application, agentic application, the governance becomes an afterthought. So it's not really a question of remaining up to date. It's a question of sequence. What comes first? Does the architecture comes first? The system comes first, and then governance, or is it really a speed question? So essentially, the governance has to be baked in at the time of architecture. So when you architect your system, cybersecurity has to be baked in. When you architect an agentic AI system, governance has to be baked in. All your guardrails have to be baked in. All your PII verification and critical data verifications have to be baked in. All your outcome validations have to be baked in terms of sensitivity, criticalness, etc. So it's really, governance has to be front loaded rather than being an afterthought.
Yeah. Vin, any thoughts on your end?
Yeah, no, absolutely. What Manas said is so critical, right? So it has to be baked in, and from my standpoint, we need to apply systems thinking. I mean, the kind of a tug of war between security and engineering is is an eternal one. But we just need to make sure that innovation is not roadblocked by security. At the same time, we don't go crazy on the engineering side and just go and have security play whack-a-mole later on, right? So we need to work in tandem.
I think ownership is, that key question, right? Who owns AI? And I think a lot of IT departments think that they own it, but it needs to be across all the whole organization. And I think it needs to sit, like it should be treated as an enterprise infrastructure that provides that intelligence and the capability. So, for me, it's really for organizations to understand who's owning it, and then that's how you govern it, I think. And those guardrails are really important. Otherwise, we get risk so many things going wrong. So I think people need to understand, or the organization needs to understand, it's a key part of the enterprise infrastructure.
Yep. I've been told that since we started a few minutes late, we have an extra 5 minutes to take one more question before we go to the audience questions. So the question that I have, and I think that's one that I'm particularly interested in your views about, is that when AI systems ingest organizational context, that can be internal communications, performance data, strategic documents, it inherits whatever biases or blind spots that exist in the data. So how do you prevent AI from simply reinforcing the company's existing problems rather than helping it, solve for those problems?
Yeah, I think that's where contextual AI as a concept comes in very handy, right? So you don't want to just take what you're doing, and this is AI or not. This comes. We've always we've all heard of people saying, "Oh, this is the way we've always done," right? So I think that's feeding that into AI will only carry that forward. So I think taking the first principles approach, taking a fresh start and saying, okay, we're building an AI system that'll help us move forward, but taking a pause and saying, okay, what do we want the AI to do? And what do we, more importantly, what should we not load into the AI systems is maybe a question that we need to ask ourselves. And that would solve a lot of these blind spots and unnecessary practices.
I'm really keen on efficiency and effectiveness. Every time I get into an organization, it's like, why are we doing this? And people, oh, we've just done it forever and we just inherited it. So I think this is a good opportunity for people to look at their systems architecture and their HR and their IT and really just trying to optimize, and you just don't simply take something and put it into AI and think it's all going to be great. And I think what we need to look at is like diverse training data and perspectives, like independent auditing, like it shouldn't just be internal. Looking at early testing to make sure that, you know, if there are any biases or exposure to risk, like that needs to be sought out quickly. And then just really what and where my background is just the oversight of the human touch. Really, we need to always have that. So we've created the AI ecosystem, but it needs to have that oversight from people outside the organization, but also within.
So, my take, the guardrail against bias in data also have to be baked in within your agentic AI. So when you are building your RAG application or agentic application, when the agent is retrieving the context from its sources, it also has to understand if there are inherent biases or any other anomalies, various types of guardrails, interrogating the data. So you, you build a system where you have possibilities of anomalies or biases or patterns, undesirable patterns to exist within the data. You build a system in such a way that it first interrogates the data, it analyzes the data, and it fetches all the patterns that are there in the data before using it. In some cases, it bakes in that pattern, that understanding um, into the subsequent workflow. And in certain cases, you also build in a human in the loop step after that analysis and say that, "Boss, here is my understanding about the data. Do you want me to go ahead with this, or do you want me to discard certain patterns from the data and move ahead with the other information?"
Yeah, definitely. So let's open it up to the audience for questions. So one of the questions I have is, can AI really deliver personalized training as an ongoing discussion? Some kind of an Aristotelian inquiry through questions, continuously guiding, coaching the learner, and check off learning objectives as they are met and completed. You know, sort of a natural human low friction learning method.
So I'll probably address the technical part of how this can be built. See, AI needs to understand if we have to build such a system, and it is absolutely possible. AI needs to understand you. AI needs to understand the conversation. AI needs to understand your personality, and that in technical ways has to be baked in the mechanics of building that context. What is important from the conversation that I need to pull out from the conversation, from the questions and answers and your reactions, etc., and create a separate context which reflects your personality, your choices, your priorities, what you want to learn, where you want to go, etc., and becomes the basis of a personal kind of coach. So that has to be the construct. And yes, absolutely, technically it can be done. There is a lot of work that is currently going on, and there will be systems emerging in those with those constructs.
Yeah, man. To add to what Manas you just said, the technology is present, right? So we are able to solve a lot of these problems and be very surgical in terms of personalized learning. I mean, it makes me think of this analogy from the first Jurassic Park movie, right? So just because we can, we should also think, should we build these? Because some of from our discussions from earlier questions, there we need to be very careful of implementing or avoiding biases and some of the blind spots that we have. So just pause ourselves and ask what kind of impact this is going to be having on the learners, because education and learning could have massive long-term impact on people who are learning. I mean, if in the context of universities and schools, right? So you can just because somebody is not interested in a subject or is weak in a subject today, that doesn't mean they can never, catch up and move forward. So just having that as builders, we need to keep that in mind to make sure that we don't build biases into the system.
I definitely think it's an important part of the learning process. Personalized learning is definitely growing. We have so many different ways that people learn, and I think I take your point about just not narrowing in, but it shouldn't be narrowing in. I thought originally learning will be like a recommendation. Oh, you've done this, you should do this, and now I've sort of evolved and thinking that it shouldn't just do that. It should be, and that's why I really like the AI mentor. It should be acting more like a mentor and saying, you've done a lot of this. How about you grow the breadth of what you're learning and perhaps, get into something else? Because, my son is 10, but he just loves maths and that's all he wants to do every day. So we have to expand that learning for the students that are just focused on one area, because we want to grow into good humans and have that breadth and being able to communicate and do all those other things. My approach really is about creating empathy and really and then innovation and bringing that to the forefront. So I do believe in personalized learning. I think it is the key, and a lot of the people are going, but they'll be very careful how we construct it.
Yeah. So one last question from the audience before we start concluding, and this might be a short one. Are you aware of any standards like ISO developed for AI governance to follow? If not, should there be?
I'm not aware. I think there should be standards and frameworks. If not standards, definitely frameworks, so people can have an idea of where to start. I think it's really important, but I don't know of any. Not sure if anyone else does.
Yeah, so I mean, there are some baked in. I mean, I'm also not exactly sure which ones and how they are, what exact policies, etc. But there are governances baked in within California Data Privacy Act, GDPR, EU Act, and etc., which govern the data that can be used within AI. So, from the privacy point of view, then what I mean, some of the most critical ones are around if AI is taking decisions which affect individuals, then your AI should be able to explain that. So the accountability, the explainability, so to say, and that's quite prevalent, and more countries are coming up with AI laws governing critical decision making process. So I mean, policies around critical decision making processes, AI processes.
I would say, in addition to GDPR, I think EU AI Act is a good one to look at. EU is very focused on consumer protection and data privacy. So I think that's a good place to start. And as we talked about before, governments are still catching up. Innovation is like, um, breakneck speed. So I think governments are still trying to catch up, but EU and GDPR are a good place to start.
Okay, so let's wrap up the session. And before we do that, let me just ask, in just one line, can you sum up your views on contextual AI in corporate learning? Just one sentence.
I believe that like the organizations that are going to really last the time are going to combine strategy, like strategic clarity with human connection. I really hope that people keep that in mind when they're developing anything in their organization with AI. Just, making sure that there's that line.
So it's more agency to the learner and a shift from just in case to just in time with institutional wisdom.
To me, there are three kinds of context that we need to think about when we think about contextual AI and learning. We need to think about the knowledge context in the context of the company or the institution. Decision context, what decisions we need the AI to make, and also the human context. Like Natalie said, we need to bake in empathy and the human sensitivities into the context.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much, Win, Manis, and Natalie. You've shared some brilliant insights. There is a lot of hard topics that you discussed, and some of these topics need ongoing discussion. But I thank you for taking your time and being here today. And thank you, everyone, for attending.